New York City, the A train. In the 1990s, the A train was notorious for robberies. For some, it might be hard to believe because nowadays people be on the trains with their smartphones and their laptops out without a care in the world. But in the 1990s, the A train was like a battlefield. If you fell asleep, you might wake up with your whole pocket missing. And guys wasn't the only victims either. Women fell prey to the wolves too. Because in the 1990s, door knocker, shell, and bamboo earrings was very popular. And the wolves, they was snatching earrings like they was snatching Lee patches of Lee jeans like back in the 1980s. You knew that every time you rode the train, you was taking a chance. You could get robbed, knocked out, and you might even lose your life. It was serious back then. I'm glad things start changing for the better because nowadays, the only time you gotta worry about getting kicked in your face is when you hear, "It's showtime!" And then the dancers come on the train and start doing them flips and swinging around the poles. I know, I know. I can hear these young cats yelling at the screen right now. You don't know what you're talking about. We still get popping on these trains, son. Yeah, I hear y'all. But some of y'all be the same ones that do a stick up in front of 4 camera phones, platform surveillance, then go home and post a video with the items that you just stole on Instagram and Facebook. Then a week later, when you locked up, you in your cell talking about, "I know somebody probably snitched on me." Nah, son, you snitched on yourselves. Don't let these little war stories that some of us older guys tell entice you to sacrifice your freedom. Because it's all fun and games when you out there getting it popping in these streets until you gotta face those consequences. Prison is gladiator school. Not everybody's gonna survive. Some of y'all gonna go up there thinking and talking about how much y'all gonna get popping when y'all get locked up. Then y'all end up sharing the cell with a guy like Fleece Johnson, the booty bandit. Y'all end up popping it wide open like Megan Stallion in the video shoot. Anyway, let me get to the story. So I'm riding the A train. It's 1994. I'm coming from Manhattan headed to Brooklyn. I was rocking a brand new coat. That was my leather shirling with the hood. The coat cost a couple of thousand, which was a lot for a coat back then. But I got the hookup from a friend. I only paid $700. But I was feeling like $1,000,000. I was rocking my gold anchor with my coat wide open. You know, thirst trapping to the fullest. I was trying to catch me a chicken head or something. That's what we called them back then. So the doors opened opposite side from where I was seated, and 2 guys walked on the train. They froze for a second. They looked at me like a fat boy would look at a sandwich. That didn't bother me too much because I was used to people staring. And in my adolescent mind, I was invincible. I ran with a crew of young, wild, money-getting teenagers. And I was close with or had family ties to almost every notable, notorious gangster in Brooklyn. So in other words, robbing me came with a lot of consequences. So the 2 guys walked further down to my right and sat in the seats across from me. It was a black guy and a Spanish guy. The black guy tilted his hat real low, covering his face and his eyes, so I couldn't make out who he was. They was staring, but every time I looked in their direction, they would play it off like they weren't looking at me. So I just flipped the cassette in my Illmatic album in my Walkman and glanced at my watch to see what time it was. Me glancing at my giant gold watch that was hidden in the sleeve of my shirling was system overload for the Spanish guy. He tapped his friend's arm and said something, but the black guy just kept it cool and kept his face hidden. Back in 1994, I was probably only 130 to 140 pounds, and that's with all my winter clothes on. I was a little skinny guy, but I was nice with my hands. I had the heart of a lion and the body of a chihuahua. I didn't care how tall you was, how big you was, how many guys was with you, because these hands worked, which made me fearless. So seeing how they reacted to me looking at my watch angered me. How dare he tap his friend like he gonna rob me or something? The rage of that lion-hearted chihuahua started to kick in. So with the cockiness of Bruce Lee, I looked directly in the Spanish guy's eyes. Then I looked down at the sleeve of my shearling, then rolled the sleeve of my shearling all the way back till my whole watch was fully exposed. Then I looked back directly in the Spanish guy's eyes and smirked. He was enraged. He rose instantly from his seat and he started to say something and started slowly moving forward. I couldn't hear what he said because I was too busy listening to "Who world is this? The world is yours. The world is yours. It's mine. It's mine. Who world is this?" in my headphones. So I removed my headphones and I stood up and I said, "What?" The Spanish kid stopped advancing forward and stood still for a second. He said, "You think I won't rob you?" Still staring in his eyes, I just said, "Nope." He stood there baffled by my response. He looked back at his friend, I guess for reassurance or something. But his friend just kept his face hidden and remained in the seat. Then he said, "I know you got a gun on you." I just laughed because I knew he was fishing. By my reaction, I guess he assumed I was strapped. He said, "I know you better have a big gun too." Then he backed up and sat back down in his seat. I sat back down in my seat too, and we just stared at each other. I was calm, but he was pissed off. His legs shaking, looking at his friend, looking back at me, looking at his friend. He mumbled something, then looked back at me. So I just placed the headphones back on my ears and turned the volume down a little so I could be more on point. Eventually, we stopped staring at each other as the train ride continued. A few minutes later, the conductor said, "Next stop, Euclid Avenue." Euclid was my stop, but now I'm thinking chess moves. I was thinking, if I got up from my seat and stood by the doors before the train stops, then I would know if they're going to try to follow me or not. But then I thought, nah, that's a bad idea, because that would give them the advantage if they came from behind me. So I decided to just remain in my seat until the train stops. But when the train stopped, to my surprise, they got up and got off. So I watched them leave the train, then I got up and followed at a distance behind them. As they walked the platform to the staircase, the Spanish guy glanced back and did a double take when he saw me. He said something to the black guy looked back, then they proceeded to go up the steps. I continued following them at a distance behind them. As I made it to the top of the steps, they were going through the turnstile and the Spanish guy looked back again and said something to the black guy. It's like they had a little argument at the turnstile because the Spanish guy looked like he's trying to convince the black guy to do something, but the black guy was like, nah, because the black guy shook his head, shook the Spanish guy's hand, and then walked to the staircase to the right to exit the train station. The Spanish guy just stood there at the turnstile waiting for me. But I felt like the gang the Warriors in that old school classic movie. You know, when they finally reached Coney Island. Shit, we home now. I'm ready. We could get it popping. This is Euclid Avenue, East New York. So I walk up to him and he says, "Oh, I didn't know you was from the East." I said, "Yeah, you live out here too?" He said, "Nah, I hustle out here." So as we proceeded to talk, we proceeded to exit the train station to the staircase to the left. He asked me if I knew this older hustler that had a drug spot on Pickens Avenue because he said he worked for him. I said, "Yeah, I know him." Then we proceeded to walk down Euclid Avenue towards Belmont, and he kept naming all the people he knew. But everybody he named, I knew. I didn't tell him how much I knew them, but I just said, "Yeah, I know him." Then he apologized for earlier as he kept walking and we kept talking. In the middle of naming names that he knew, he kept singing this line from the Method Man song, I Bring the Pain. He kept repeating to himself, niggas is decaf, I stick 'em for the cream. Niggas is decaf, I stick 'em for a cream. He didn't have headphones on or anything, but he just kept repeating that line to himself in between talking. So as we approached Belmont, I saw this older cat that I knew. He said, what up, Light? I said, what up? And he smiled at both of us and kept it moving. As we crossed the street on Belmont and continued to walk down Euclid Avenue towards Sutter Avenue, he still kept repeating himself. Niggas is decaf, I stick 'em for the cream. But before I could realize that he just kept rapping to himself to muster up the courage to rob me, he grabbed the hood of my Sherlin, pulled out a 380 and said, run your jewels. I instantly spin off, ripping the hood of my Sherlin and ran behind the car. He chased me around the car and I'm ducking as he was trying to get to me. Then he stopped running and said, I'ma kill you. Hearing him say he'll kill me did something to me. My fear of getting shot turned into anger. Then I glanced at the ground and I saw the hood of my brand new Sherlin. My brand new Sherlin's the only time I wore it, the first day I wore it. The hood just sitting there on the ground. Hearing them threaten my life and seeing my ripped Sherlin hood got me so angry that I stopped ducking and stopped running. I rose up and looked him in his eyes and said, if you gonna shoot me then. He said, what? I'll kill you. Then in the rage, I don't know what I was thinking, but my temper took over and I rushed towards him. I don't know what my plan was. I was just reacting in the moment. I'm thinking maybe I could take the gun from him and shoot him with it. I know that's a stupid plan, but I was like the Incredible Hulk when I got angry. I had so much built-in rage in me at that time in my life. You know, my best friend Sherrod got killed by another childhood friend, and after that, it kind of changed me. I kind of lost all fear of dying. I lost so many friends at a childhood age growing up in Cypress Hills projects that we didn't expect to live to adulthood. So with all this rage in me, I ran towards him. Lucky for me, he was just bluffing. He hauled ass down the block. I chased behind him, running down Belmont. But then I realized, what the hell am I doing? So I stopped chasing him, walked back, picked up the hood of my Sherlin, and started walking towards Cypress Hills. One of my friend's older sisters called my name right before I reached Cypress. I stopped and waited for her. She asked me, what happened? I said nothing, just some guy tried to rob me. She told me, wow, I saw the whole thing. I was on the train with y'all. I saw y'all arguing, but I thought y'all knew each other. But that's how the 1990s was. People witnessed crimes and drama, and everybody would just mind their business. So I got back to Cypress and made some phone calls. So we went to Pickens Avenue to the spot that the guy said he worked at. It was me, my Uncle Wok, I think it was either Jay or Rome, and my boy T2. I knew the guy that ran the spot well. He was also from Cypress. He told me he didn't have anybody that worked there by that description. He told me I could look around if I wanted, but he said, nah, the guy must was lying. So we left. But strangely, about 2 weeks later, I bumped into that same OG that said, what up, Light? When I was walking with the Spanish kid, right before the Spanish kid tried to rob me. He told me that he knew the kid, but he said that the kid didn't want any problems with me. And he asked me, he said, yo, on the strength of me, could you just leave it alone? And I told him, all right. What people don't realize, it's a small world. When you do things, all those things can come back to you. Everyone knows somebody. But I just left it alone. And in hindsight, I'm just grateful to be alive.